What's up, BNN family? You won't believe the jaw-dropping events that are about to unfold. Stick with us to the end. It's going to be insane. Let's begin today's interesting story. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. The silence in my apartment was unfamiliar, almost unsettling, but it was a silence I had longed for. It had been weeks since Leah and I had ended our relationship, and though the weight of it still lingered in the corners of my mind, I felt a strange sense of relief. Relief and exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying something heavy for too long, only to finally set it down and realize how much it had been crushing you. Leah and I had started out strong. At least, that's how I remembered it. In the beginning, she was my biggest cheerleader, the person who believed in me when I doubted myself. We laughed together, dreamed together, and for a while, it felt like we were building something real. But somewhere along the way, things began to shift. The support I had once relied on turned into something else. Something possessive, controlling. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a question there. But over time, it became impossible to ignore. Her jealousy was the first red flag. As I began to find success in my career, her reactions to my achievements became less about celebration and more about comparison. She would make offhand remarks about how my promotions must have come at the expense of my personal life, or how my long hours at work were probably just an excuse to avoid her. At first, I brushed it off, chalking it up to stress or insecurity. But the more I accomplished, the more her resentment grew. It was as if my victories were a threat to her, a reminder of something she felt she lacked. The accusation started soon after. Out of nowhere, she would question my loyalty, throwing around baseless claims of infidelity. I would come home from work, exhausted but content, only to be met with a barrage of questions about where I had been and who I had been with. It didn't matter how many times I reassured her. The doubt was always there, simmering beneath the surface. Her passive-aggressive comments became a constant soundtrack to our relationship, chipping away at my confidence until I began to question myself. The breaking point came one evening during dinner. We were sitting across from each other at our usual spot, the air between us thick with tension. Leah had been unusually quiet, picking at her food without saying much. Then out of nowhere, she looked up at me and said, "You know, a man should always fear losing his woman." Her tone was casual, almost playful, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. In that moment, everything became clear. I realized I couldn't keep living like this, walking on eggshells, constantly trying to prove my loyalty, my worth. I took a deep breath, set my fork down, and told her it was over. The days that followed were a blur. Leah didn't take it well. She oscillated between anger and desperation, pleading with me to reconsider, to give her another chance. But I stood my ground. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity, of freedom. I moved into my own apartment, a small space that felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of our shared life. Each day brought a new sense of peace, a reminder that I was finally living for myself. Leah, on the other hand, seemed lost. She reached out to me several times, her messages filled with apologies and promises to change. She talked about how much she missed me, how she couldn't imagine her life without me. But I knew better. I knew that going back would only mean returning to the same cycle of control and manipulation. I had worked too hard to rebuild my sense of self to let that happen again. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. I found joy in the little things. Cooking meals for myself, spending quiet evenings with books, reconnecting with friends I had drifted away from. I even started dating again, though cautiously, taking my time to trust someone new. It wasn't always easy, but it was mine. My life, my choices, my peace. Then one day, I ran into Leah at work. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to react. She looked the same, but different. There was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. We exchanged polite greetings, but the conversation was brief, awkward. As I walked away, I realized something surprising. I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, not even nostalgia. Just a quiet acknowledgement that we had both moved on in our own ways. Since the breakup, I've learned to cherish my independence, to find strength in my own company. Leah, I imagine, is still figuring things out. I don't know what her journey looks like now, but I hope she finds a peace she's searching for. As for me, I'm finally free. Free from the weight of jealousy, free from the shadows of our past. Our paths may have diverged, but in a way, I'm grateful for that. Because now, for the first time in a long time, I'm living a life that's truly my own.